Chapter 6, Section 5, The Spread of Greek Culture. Who are your heroes? Are there people living today or in the past whom you admire? Why are they your heroes? What can you do to become more like them? Questions to explore and think about as we go through this video in this section. What role did the conquest of Alexander the Great play in spreading Greek culture? 2. What advances in science did the Greeks make after Alexander's death? Key terms that we defined for you through the Google Classroom: barbarian, assassinate, Hellenistic. Key people and places to keep in mind throughout the video: King Philip, Macedonia, Alexander the Great, Alexandria, Euclid, and Archimedes. Please make sure to have your Google Doc open to complete your questions to go with this video as you watch. As you come across each answer, pause the video, fill in that answer, and then restart the video. When you have completed the doc, make sure to submit through the Google Classroom. King Philip of Macedonia had not wasted the money he spent on Greek tutors for his son. Young Alexander was a fine student, and an eager one. The boy wanted to learn as much as he could, especially about the ideas and the deeds of the Greeks. The kingdom of Macedonia lay just north of Greece. Alexander thought of himself as a Greek and spoke the Greek language, but people who lived to the south in cities such as Athens and Sparta did not really accept the Macedonians as Greeks. They thought the Macedonians were barbarians, or wild and uncivilized people. Alexander's tutor was the Greek philosopher Aristotle. Aristotle taught the boy Greek literature, philosophy, and science. Aristotle also passed on his strong feelings that the Greeks were far better than other people and therefore deserved to rule. Alexander loved his tutor, but his role model was Achilles, the warrior hero in the Iliad. One day, Alexander vowed he would visit the site of Troy and lay a wreath on the tomb of his hero. Alexander builds an empire. Before King Philip seized power in 359 BC, Macedonia was poor and divided. Philip united Macedonia and built an army even stronger than Sparta's. With such an army, and with his talent for waging war, Philip captured one Greek city-state after another. By 338 BC, Philip controlled all of Greece. No one had ever done this. Alexander comes to the throne. Philip then planned to attack Persia, but in 336 BC, before he could carry out his plan, he was assassinated or murdered by a rival. At just 20 years old, Alexander became king. This was his chance to be as great as his hero, Achilles. Alexander the Great. One of Alexander's first actions was to invade the Persian Empire. Within 11 years, he had conquered Persia, Egypt, and lands extending beyond the Indus River in the east. He earned the right to be called Alexander the Great. Alexander's energy and military genius helped him succeed. He drove himself and his army hard, advancing across vast lands at lightning speed. His soldiers grumbled, but they obeyed him. Wherever Alexander went, he established cities, many of them named after himself. Even today, there are numerous cities named Alexandria or Alexandropolis throughout Western Asia. Alexander never stayed very long in his cities. He quickly pushed on, and he never lost the battle. At last, not far beyond the Indus River, his weary troops refused to go another step east. Alexander was angry, but he turned back. Alexander got as far as Babylon, where he came down with a fever. In 323 BC, only 13 years after he came to the throne, Alexander died. Like the legendary warrior Achilles, he had died young. But he had gone far beyond beyond the deeds of his hero. He had conquered practically all of the known world. And here you can see a city of Alexandria. Greek culture spreads. Alexander's death spelled death for his empire. Within 50 years, the empire had broken into three main kingdoms. Each one was ruled by a family descended from one of his commanders. Although the empire broke apart, Greek culture remained alive and well in these new kingdoms. The Hellenistic kingdoms. When Alexander took control of lands, he tried not to destroy the cultures of the defeated people. Instead, he hoped that in his new cities, local cultures would mix with Greek culture. Unfortunately, this did not happen in the three Hellenistic kingdoms, as they came to be called. Hellenistic comes from the word Hellas, the name Greeks gave their land. The cities of the Hellenistic world were modeled after Greek cities. Greek kings ruled, and Greeks held the most important jobs. There were Greek temples and agoras. Citizens gathered at large theaters for performances of old Greek tragedies. The Greek language was spoken in the cities, though people in the countryside spoke their local language. Hellenism in Egypt. The greatest of all Hellenistic cities was Alexandria in Egypt. Alexander had founded this city in 332 BC at the edge of the Nile Delta. Alexandria became the capital of Egypt. Over the years, it grew famous as a center for business and trade. Its double harbor was dominated by a huge lighthouse that rose about 400 feet in the air. The tower was topped by a flame that guided ships safely to port. The important Hellenistic cities were centers of learning, but Alexandria was greater than any of the rest. It boasted the largest library in the world, with 500,000 book rolls. Alexandria was the learning capital of the Greek world. Scholars and writers from all over came to use the huge library. Mathematics and science also flourished at Alexandria. Around 300 BC, a mathematician named Euclid developed a branch of mathematics called geometry. He started with accepted mathematical laws. Then he wrote carefully, thought-out, step-by-step proofs of mathematical principles. The proofs helped explain the qualities of such figures as squares, cubes, angles, triangles, and cones. Mathematicians today still use Euclid's system. Have you ever heard that the people of Christopher Columbus's time believed that the earth was flat? This is not accurate. In Hellenistic times, many scientists knew the earth was round. A scientist named Eratosthenes, Gesundheit, even calculated the distance around the earth. His answer, 24,662 miles, was very close. Probably the greatest scientist of the times was Archimedes. Archimedes discovered that people can use pulleys and levers to lift very heavy objects. One story says that he hoisted up a loaded ship with these devices. Once he boasted, "Give me a lever long enough and a place to stand on, and I will move the earth." This is the end of Chapter 6, Section 5, and the end of Chapter 6. There are a few questions you should be able to answer at the conclusion here. First is, what features of Greek culture could be seen in Hellenistic kingdoms? 2. Describe the contributions of Euclid, Eratosthenes, God bless you, and Archimedes. Finally, why do you think Alexander the Great named so many cities after himself? Once you have been able to answer these questions, also make sure you have completed your Google Doc through the Google Classroom, and make sure to submit to complete your homework. And as always, be excellent to one another. See you in class tomorrow.